For more than 30 years, Penn's prison writing program has been on the front lines of prison reform, helping inmates in federal, state, and local penitentiaries cope with life behind bars, gain skills, and have a voice while they are there. This inaugural partnership between the Green Space at WNYC and Penn is very meaningful to us, as inmates will have the opportunity for the very first time to see and hear their pieces being read via a live video webcast. Tonight's conversation balances on the shoulders of many across the globe who have carved out spaces for people to gather, people of all races, creeds, ages, and positions, to trouble the local and global waters, to engage with difficult conversations with dignity, to propel us to move beyond just talk and to act, and to create bridges of discourse that connect us one to another. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Jessica Hagedorn, a poet, playwright, and screenwriter whose work includes 3 novels, Dream Jungle, The Gangster of Love, and Dog Eaters. She is editor of Charlie Chan is Dead, an anthology of contemporary Asian American fiction. Jessica is the vice president of PEN America Center's board of directors and also serves on the World Voices Festival Advisory Committee. She'll serve us tonight as our mistress of ceremony, so please join me in welcoming her to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Welcome to Penn's second annual Prison Writing Benefit Reading. We are thrilled to partner with WNYC to present Breakout, Voices from the Inside. Tonight's event will help to raise much-needed funds to enable this important program to continue into the future, but also to help the prisoners see themselves in a new way as writers. If at any point you feel moved, please visit www.penn.org and make a contribution to PEN American Center. Thank you, my dear, to keep this program going. The United States has the highest documented incarceration rate in the world. There are hundreds and hundreds of prisons across the country, and as of 2007, these institutions house more than 2,300,000 inmates, 70% of whom are non-white. Nearly 1 million of those in prison are serving time for committing nonviolent crimes. Sadly, the situation is not improving. For more than 35 years, Penn's prison writing program has been dedicated to helping make the harsh realities of American imprisonment part of our social justice dialogue. Penn's program has also been on the front lines of prison reform, helping inmates in federal, state, and local penitentiaries cope with life behind bars, gain skills, and have a voice while they are there. The prison writing program accomplishes all this through mentorships and an annual writing competition that receives between 20 to 30 entries per day from local, state, and federal prisons, including from prisoners on death row. Tonight's program will include a reading and a brief panel discussion on the realities of the American penal system. The reading will feature excerpts from the award-winning manuscripts of the Prison Writing Contest and from the extraordinarily moving diaries that men and women have written as part of Penn's collaboration with the Anne Frank Center, USA. Jackson Taylor, the director of the Prison Writing Program, will moderate the discussion. We had hoped to include Kenneth Hartman, author of Mother California, a story of redemption behind bars, in this interview, but we found out this morning from his publisher at Atlas Books that the prison is not allowing the call. Instead, we will play an excerpt of an interview that Ken participated in recently. Proceeds from tonight's event will benefit Penn's prison writing program. The program's budget, as you can imagine, is stretched to the limit, and it runs on grants and donations from people like you. Tonight we honor the thousands of prisoner writers who have the courage to put their work on paper. I'd like to introduce the following readers. Born and raised in Brooklyn, Lemon Andersen has been featured as a regular on HBO's Deaf Poetry and was also an original cast member and writer of Russell Simmons's Tony Award-winning Deaf Poetry Jam on Broadway. On screen, Lemon has appeared in Spike Lee's Inside Man and The Soloist. His one-man show, The County of Kings, played to great acclaim recently at the Public Theater in downtown Manhattan. Eric Bogosian wrote and starred in the play and film Talk Radio and is the author of 6 solos, 3 novels, and numerous plays. As an actor, Eric currently stars as a continuing character on Law & Order: Criminal Intent. His latest novel is Perforated Heart. Mary Gaitskill is the author of the novels Veronica and 2 Girls, Fat and Thin, as well as the story collections Bad Behavior and Because They Wanted To, which was nominated for the PEN/Faulkner Award in 1998. Mary's new story collection is titled Don't Cry. Dawood Gonzalez works with men transitioning from incarceration into society. A former inmate himself, Dawood found poetry in prison with the first poets of Mount McGregor. He lives and writes in New York City. Jamal Joseph is a professor of professional practice and chair of Columbia University's graduate film program. Jamal began writing while serving a 9-year sentence in Leavenworth Federal Prison. He is the author of the Tupac Shakur biography, Tupac Legacy. He is also the co-founder and executive artistic director of Impact Repertory Theater, a Harlem-based leadership training and performing arts organization that has trained and mentored over 1,000 Harlem teens. Marie Ponsot is a poet, literary critic, essayist, teacher, and translator. She is the author of several collections of poetry, including The Birdcatcher, a finalist for the 1999 Lenore Marshall Poetry Prize and the winner of the National Book Critics Circle Award, and Springing, New and Selected Poems, which was named a Notable Book of the Year by the New York Times. Her new book, which has just been published, is called, and I love this title, Easy. Patricia Smith is a world-renowned spoken word poet. She is also a 2008 National Book Award finalist for her 5th book of poetry, Blood Dazzler, which chronicles the human, physical, and emotional toll exacted by Hurricane Katrina, a catastrophic natural event with lasting spiritual and political impact. And last but not least, Sean Wilsey is the author of the memoir, Oh, the Glory of It All, and currently serves as editor-at-large for McSweeney's Quarterly Concern. His newest book, State by State, A Panoramic Portrait of America, was released in September 2008. He is at work on a book about Nassau. Thank you very much.
David J. Lista, San Quentin Prison, April 7, 2009. I am a man in blue. I am a man with the blues. I exist in blackness, but live in the blues. I was not always blue or black, blues or blackness, but here I am in blue. Therefore, I am in darkness. I yearn for the light. I grope in the darkness, stretching out to grasp a thin strand of brightness in the distance ahead. I hope only to stretch myself to somehow reach the light. Someday soon, bathe himself in light and celebrate the brightness of a new day, shrouded in the brilliance of color.
This is David Leitner, excerpt from a Journal of a Prisoner, October 1998. My fear is justified. Big Brother is watching. It's not just my paranoia. They have stolen my writings, suicide letters to nobody, and then had the balls to sit there and read from them out of my file. I haven't bothered to ask for them back because they are now the property of the state. I wonder, is each page I write just another page added to that file? I am tempted not to write at all, out of self-preservation, or fear, really. But no, I must write. I'm tired of holding it all in. I'm tired of being silent about the things that matter. I've got this piece of paper in a 3-ring binder which I purchased from the commissary for $3.03 plus tax. I thought that it might be slightly awkward or uncomfortable writing like this, and it is, but I think I can live with it. Maybe if I don't write all the way across the page, but only about 2/3 of the way, it won't be so awkward. In 1,000 years, it probably won't matter anyhow, so I'll just do what comes naturally and keep on writing. June 2004. It has been 5 years and 8 months since I made that journal entry. I am still in prison. I have not left prison. I have grown and changed in many ways, have had notable successes and failures, but I am still rotting here in prison.
Jorge Antonio Renaud, First Prize Poetry, 2005. Title, Prison Moon. 4 a.m., work duty, and I begin my solitary trudge from outer compound to main building. A shivering guard, chilled in his lonely outpost, strip searches me until content that my inquisitional nudity poses no threat, and then whispers the secret code that allows me admittance into the open quarter-mile walkway. I chuff my way into another day. As ice glints on the razor wire and the rifles note my numbered passage, silent but for my huffs and scuffle on the cracked, slippery sidewalk, a new moon veiled in wispy fog and beringed in glory hangs over the prison, its gaudy glow taunting the halogen spotlights. The moon's creamy pool upsets some liquid equilibrium within me, and like tides, wolves, and all manner of madmen, I surrender, disturbed by certainty, under the bony luminescence of a grinning moon. Lunar deliriums grip me, and I howl once, then again, and surely somewhere an unbound sleeper sits. Penitence is a dying, a giddy death. I shake myself sane, and as the echoes hang in the frigid air, I explain to the wild-eyed guard that convicts, all animals under the leash must bay at the beauty beyond them.
Charles Patrick Norman, Tomoka Correctional Institute, Daytona Beach, Florida, Thursday, May 15th, 2008, 7:15 a.m. Dear Diary, I grow flowers. I've been doing this all my life, off and on. Some of my earliest memories are of holding on to my grandmother's skirt as she tended her flower and vegetable garden in the country near Redwater, Texas. At Railford in late 1980, I finally got permission to order flower seeds, germinate them under lights, and grow them around our housing area. Everyone loved the colorful blooms, with a few exceptions, and I got approval to extend the flower program. Over the years, transfers came to many different prisons across Florida, and I continued growing flowers. Years after I left Railford, an old man arrived on the transfer to Polk, where I'd been a couple of years. He told the admitting guards, "Charlie Norman must be here." They told him yes, he was right. How did he know? He gestured to the flower beds in the visiting park, the lines of flowers along the sidewalks, and told them the instant he saw all those flowers, he knew I was here. No one else in the prison system did that.
Beverly James, WERDCC, Vandalia, Missouri. Friday, November 14th, 2008. About 9 a.m., the whole HU was locked down because a metal part from a dust mop was missing. This lasted all day until after the 4:30 count time was over. We missed medical and haircut appointments. They brought us lunches and let us use the bathroom one at a time with the CO monitoring us in the hallways. We took naps and talked in our room. Then about 3 p.m. they finally searched our wing. They patted us down and made us all sit facing the wall in the day room, yelling at us not to look around or talk. They had thrown all trash contents on the floor and recycling bins too. They shoved all the chairs upside down in the middle of the day room. They ransacked our rooms, throwing most of our locker contents on the beds and stripping them. It took me over half an hour to reorganize and put everything back. They took my clear plastic zip-up bags I put my cassettes and Walkman in, and I kept odds and ends in the cosmetic bag, and they took my new pens and markers that I had an IOC for from theater class. They even took my 3 rolls of state toilet paper because I had 3 rolls of my personal Angel Soft TP that I bought at Canteen. I should be able to have both, so I got 3 rolls of state TP from the rotunda that evening. As it turned out, someone did make a shank out of the metal, and they found it and put her in the hole. That made us feel better that this ordeal was worthwhile, because we had thought that the metal part had probably been thrown away long ago, and we were missing important appointments for nothing.
Gary Salinas, Outfit Unit, Iowa Park, Texas, Friday, June 27, 2008. Today I will tell you about my love, chess. I learned how to play chess in County Jail in 1997, and I was hooked instantly. After about a month of playing, the dude who taught me how to play couldn't beat me. Just from natural talent, I fared well even after I came to prison. Then around 2002, someone showed me a magazine called Chess Life, and I was mesmerized. I never knew there was such a thing as professional chess. I never knew there were national championships and world championships. I never knew about Bobby Fischer or Gary Kasparov or Anatoly Karpov or Anand or Kramnik or Leko or my honey dumpling Irina crush. I bought 3 Chess Life magazines from the dude, and I quickly learned how little I knew about chess. I lacked understanding of the most fundamental elements of chess. Control the center of the board. Develop your pieces. Don't bring the queen out too early. Castle. I would stay up all night devouring every page of those magazines. I soon subscribed to it myself, and I began really studying, and my game improved dramatically. Here in administrative segregation, we have our board's numbers so that we can't call out the moves verbally. As I got better, I started beating everyone who played me. In administrative segregation, there are a lot of chess players. Well, what else is there to do? We ran tournaments ourselves with an entry fee and a prize pot, and I started winning them all. Pretty soon, I was making a name for myself, and no one wanted to bet anymore. So I started putting up 2-to-1 odds. That worked for a little while, but not for long. Then I was putting up game odds and money odds. I'd say I put up $10 to your 5, and I've got to beat you 3 in a row. That, too, worked for a while, but not long. Nowadays, it's nearly impossible for me to find a bet. I started playing blindfolded. I got to go to the recreation day room so everyone can see I have no chessboard, and I play out of my head. These dudes think I'm a beast. They don't know what I know. The world record is 38 simultaneous blindfolded games. Now check this out. One day, when my scribbles make it to the #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, and I'm being broadcasted via satellite on the Oprah Winfrey Show, Oprah's going to say, "Mr. Big G, I've investigated your scribbles, and I found everything to be true. Your upbringing, your crime, your assault cases. However, you claim to be a good chess player, and by my investigation has revealed that your United States Chess Federation rating is 1465, which is not very good at all. So listen up, Oprah. My 1465 rating is not a set rating. You have to play something like 26 correspondence chess games to get a real set rating. I've only played 6. But I have limited funds, and paying for a stamp every time I send a move go too expensive for me. I had to drop out of the tournament forfeiting all those games. But one day, When my financial situation gets better, I'll sign up for another tournament and see how really I fare against these real chess players of the world.
David Leitner, excerpt from a journal of a prisoner. What does it mean to have a dictionary, and why is it wrong for a prisoner to be denied a personal dictionary? Back when I was in solitary confinement, the prison would only allow me to have one religious book, but no other personal books. I spent about 3 to 4 months with no way to look up words. I wanted to do some serious studying and writing, but how serious can my studies be when I am unable to use new words or read and understand material with unfamiliar terms? I was so frustrated by this that I eventually filed a civil rights lawsuit against the prison claiming violation of my First Amendment rights. The rule eventually changed, and I was allowed to have 2 personal books. I chose to purchase the new shorter Oxford English Dictionary. I finally received it in February 1999, and I have had it ever since. In fact, as I sit here in my plastic chair with my typewriter set up on the top of my green metal locker, my trusty NSOED sits right here beside me. This dictionary is so important to me that I have hung on to it for over 5 years. And I know when I walk out the prison gate in 2008, I'll still have it with me. I've possessed and relinquished many material possessions in my life, but there have been very few I have hung on to for as long as I have already hung on to this dictionary. Maybe I don't use it every day or nearly as often as I could, but having it there when I do need it opens up a world of possibilities.
I'm Patricia, and I'll be reading a poem by Diane Hamill Metzger, which won honorable mention in 2005, Panopticon. So again, this vista is eroding. The buildings dim. The women doze in their steel and stone barns, their toil having been state-approved, the sheets bleached harmless and stacked on the table by numbers as the lambent stars emerge. This is the desolation of similitude and recurrence. And the ones not yet hardened sometimes nod in passing, with their eyes averted as in deference, and the tree-bedded crows, Iban, Lantrant, mocking. Again! Always again it begins, and the years seep out of the wind.
Dennis Forrest, Ramsey Unit, Rose Sharon, Texas, June 7th, 2008. This is a picture of me. It was taken during the time of day when the sun shines through the living room window, creating a glare, so it might be a little blurry around the edges. That's me right there in the corner, behind a Christmas tree. It's hard to see me. You have to look through the branches, around the decorations, and then put the pieces together. I'm sitting there listening quietly to my sister talk to her imaginary friends who live in the walls. She's a pretty little redhead right there in the center of the room. I've tried. I can't hear the voices, but it makes me sick inside knowing she does. It's the same sick feeling I get when I see the way our new stepfather looks at her after he's had a few too many. It's easy to see me if you pretend the tree's not there. That's what I do. You see, this picture was taken the same year I learned there was no Santa Claus.
John Yarborough, Ramsey 1 Unit, Rosharon, Texas, July 2nd, 2008. Today I ate barbecue chicken with a plastic spoon. Sound impossible? Well, 1,800 inmates did it. Usually we eat with a fork. But today, they had only tiny white plastic picnic spoons. It's hard to eat chicken thighs with a spoon. Quote me on that. You ask, why didn't I just pick up the bird? Too hot. The chicken was just out of the oven, and we only had 15 minutes to eat, so I used the spoon. The little spoon made the chicken look huge. Maybe this is a new diet idea for the masses. Tiny eating implements, plates, glasses, worth a try. All these other diet ideas have been tried.
extra paper. This is a poem by Scott Walt. I wrestle with my morning coffee, shuffling pages in the trance-like state of newspaper consciousness. Bomb blast leaves 14 dead in Mombasa, or was it 18? 2 Israelis for sure. The Kenyans exist in a faded one-liner. West of Mecca and still further across the Atlantic, you can hear the war drums and the dazzling voices beneath your feet, forcing the world to be free. Hatred goes down as history in a blood trail on long horizontal pages. It didn't spring up yesterday. The evidence and moralistic intentions shine bright on the myriad headstones. Nothing changes downstream. Nothing with man changes. Behind a table of silk suits, bifocals, and liberalism with 6 seats to spare, every word will be revised, misspelt, or forgotten as required. It's an awkward thing, this preoccupation with killing. Somewhere and everywhere along the border, pesos dream of cold, risking their essence for a better life in America, only to realize their fate is preordained to the fields, the prisons, or death in the desert of San Libertad. I read of a Texas girl huddled in a corner in the darkness of a locked closet, surrounded by food crumbs, excrement, and the overwhelming pungency of urine. She'd been there for months, or eternity, perhaps never. She was 8, 25 pounds, minus the innocence, plus or minus the scars. Meanwhile, my coffee gets cold, along with the general human condition.
David Leitner continues. Last night someone got hurt badly over on C Block. I hear they found him beat down in his cell. I heard the code blue, and then looking out my window I saw the white Dodge prison patrol truck speed out the driveway, the blue and yellow flashers on, and zip up to Pleasant Valley Road. About 5 minutes later, an ambulance came speeding south on Pleasant Valley, and then with the prison escort leading the way and both lights flashing, the ambulance drove into the prison. Many of the guys on the unit became excited at the sight of all the colorful flashing lights. What I wanted to write about all this violence is that it scares me.
This is Kitchen Workers by Gail Leonard, and it won the second place fiction prize in 2007. It is as quiet as it ever gets. By itself, that statement is not particularly informative. But in a room that sleeps 140 women, quiet times are rare and brief. When I say quiet, I am describing the noise level you would hear in a bus station in the middle of the night. The laundry compressor going on and off outside the window. The whispered conversations of women and loud talk of officers, and the hall public address announcement give definition to quiet. I have learned to sleep through much of this constant racket, so I could not understand what keeps waking me up at this ungodly hour of 3 a.m. when I should be taking advantage of the relative quiet to get desperately needed sleep. The kitchen workers are up and getting ready for their early morning shift, but they make very little noise. I thought I had taught myself to sleep through their ministrations, but here I lay in my bed, once again, awake. I struggle to quash the feelings of desperation that wash over me regularly, carefully contained despair that is always seeking an outlet. I have been here almost 6 months, and it took some time to develop my routine, such as that is. Competing for space, showers, and quiet time are not easy tasks when living among not only the 140 women in this room, but amidst the other 700 within the walls of a prison originally built for 500 women. I currently live in Mary Johnson's Prison for Women, an elegant-sounding name for the only women's prison in this state. It is old and decrepit, like the system that sends women here by the hundreds. It is also constantly overcrowded with faces changing daily. My living space consists of one single bed, 6 feet by 2.5 feet wide. The comparison to a grave is hard to resist when I consider the dreariness of my surroundings and the futility of existence in this place. There are 140 graves, covered not by brown dirt, but by blue blankets. There are 140 identical spaces holding 140 identically dressed women who have 140 identical looks of despair. Because of the misery penetrating the whole facility, when my eyes open at 3 a.m., I am annoyed that I must face my current reality against my will. On the other hand, it is only the middle of the night that there is any chance of finding a few minutes of relative quiet so that a lady can think undisturbed. Everyone living here has a state job. They call it a job no matter what tasks are assigned. Some consider themselves lucky and get a job requiring little effort or time. I never understood that attitude because all we have is time. Deborah has such a job. She is South Yard worker, which entails picking up cigarette butts twice a day for 10 minutes each time in the exercise yard. We do not get to go out often despite what the logs show. So many days there is not much to pick up. Deborah gets called to work by a loud, disembodied voice over the PA system screaming, "South Yard workers, report to the South Yard and do your job now!" I could see Deborah's bed across the room. She would be slowly putting her boots on so she could report to work. 10 minutes later she is back, whereupon she promptly lies down in her grave and resumes reading a book. Of course, there are those who work all day too, some harder than others. The prison has invented a myriad of jobs to keep us all busy to some degree, and let's face it, to keep the payroll as low as possible. For every job an inmate does, that is one person they do not have to hire. If an inmate is lucky, she got a state job in an air-conditioned office because there is no air conditioning in the dorms. I am one of the lucky ones. My job consists of tutoring other inmates enrolled in the GED program. Every morning, Monday through Friday at 7 a.m., I walk down a long hall, periodically answering a correctional officer's. They do not like to be called guards, so that is a better description of their duties. Correctional officer's barked question, "Where are you going?" "To work, sir." I politely answer, looking down at the floor so there is no question of arrogance or lack of submissiveness. Once I arrive at the prison ground school, I spend the day in air conditioning, happily teaching math and science, answering questions, and generally counting my blessings that I am not a laundry room attendant, or much worse, a kitchen worker. At the end of my working day, I walk back down the long hall, answering the same barked questions I responded to that morning on my way to work. I spend these moments dreading entering the dorm, where my blue blanketed grave awaits me. The hall, being enclosed, stays relatively cool, but not so the dorm. Crossing the threshold is like stepping from purgatory into hell. The damp heat grabs me like a childhood monster with clammy paws, pulls me in, smothers my body, and makes it hard to breathe. I sweat profusely from the humidity and laugh inwardly that women pay good money at spas to breathe such steaming air. I will get no relief for the next 16 hours. I am home.
Christopher Best, First Place Essay, 2005. Excerpt from Live from Texas Death Row. My first day on my death row job was hell, just like each day since. Every day I confront blood and its consequences. Every day I struggle to keep my own life force contained and flowing, beating back, cajoling, and deceiving Moloch away from my doorposts. As I tell you about it, the names herein have been changed to protect the living, the dead, and to keep my ass from getting shanked. As a worker on death row, I am a member of the Death Society. Each morning when I arrive at work, I hand my ID card to a guard at the building entrance. I swear, lately I've come to smell and taste the death row building even before I step inside. As I walk in, I feel the dread on my flesh, even in me. Next comes the strip search, the ubiquitous humiliation of prison life, also magnified on death row because it's conducted with much more detail, specificity, and time. My co-workers and I remove every stitch of clothing. One guard carefully inspects each clothing item, turning socks, boxers, pants, and shirt inside out, inspecting seams for hidden items, crinkling every square inch of fabric. Our shoes are bent, unlaced, pounded, and tossed, insoles left here and there on the floor. Next, each of us spreads our legs, opens our butt cheeks, shows the bottoms of our feet, holds up our package of manhood, opens our mouth, and turns all about, arms held high. Next, each of us sits on a metal detecting chair, which looks at our guts with some sort of high-tech imaging to make sure we haven't swallowed a weapon or contraband. Next, we place our faces on a metal detecting plate on the wall, first one side, then the other, as a double check on the mouth. From this point and all day long, a series of cameras bear down on us in the hallways, and guards stationed at a series of gates check all movement and action. Some of the cons on death row hang their heads low when they walk. Their time draws near. Others seem almost chipper. They smile, perhaps on their way to visitation, which is available every day to them, unlike the weekends only for GP. Some guards respond well to the guys, joking and chatting if it seems appropriate, or quiet and all business if the dude is sullen or dejected. Like the head, the feet also tell the story on the row. Prisoners who can't afford the $38 white Converse tennies wear state shoes or slippers. All state gear makes a lot more noise. You can tell the mood of the prisoner by the sound of his shuffle in state shoes or slippers. Shh, goes the dragging feet of a downer. Clip, clop, clap, patters the buoyant man's prance in his plastic shorn, high-stepping feet. He's trying to get somewhere, as they say in here, and today it's not the needle.
Christina McNaughton, Just Another Death, First Place in Memoir, 2007. I sit on my bunk as the minutes tick by. The count should have cleared over half an hour ago. Something's up. In a place where timing and routine and schedule are the axis upon which the world revolves, remaining locked for so long past the standard count, time sends Morse code through the heart of every inmate. All receive the same message. Something on the compound is wrong. Unfortunately, right now there is no information. Everyone's locked, so the jail grapevine hasn't had a chance to wrap its tendrils around the latest juicy event. I hear the CO tell my neighbor, "Get comfy, we're going to be down for the night." Shit. Whatever the cause of this lockdown, it's serious. I'm resigned to spending the evening reading and watching TV. The next morning it's business as usual, and I go about my routine with no more than a thought or two about last night's mysterious lockdown. Why bother? Someone's bound to fill me in sooner or later. That's the thing about jail gossip. Everyone's dying to get their hands on it, but they are even more anxious to give it away. My hypothesis is correct. It takes little more than an hour after mass movement before the big news reaches my ears. Can you believe it? That girl used a damn garbage bag to kill herself with. Ain't that shit crazy? Someone I hardly know has intentionally weaseled over to me as I pass through the prison's Grand Central Station, the medical unit lobby/waiting room. A heavy-set Puerto Rican woman of indeterminable age, she's made a career out of ferreting out every morsel of jailhouse scandal and circulating it with internet speed. She scrambles over the wretched details of the previous night's tragedy with the excitement of a carnival rat in the popcorn machine. Her beady black eyes search over my face, hungry for my reaction. "Wow," I stammer, trying desperately to push the awful visualization from my mind. Who was it? My acquaintance leans in conspiratorially and proceeds, for the benefit of all around, to raise her voice 50 or 60 decibels. She drops the name of an old friend, and I feel my heart crumple like a wad of used tissue. The linoleum floor ripples out in front of me, and hot, salty pressure throbs behind my eyes, a warning that I've got about 7 seconds to hightail it out of here before I'm guilty of a jail misdemeanor. Crying in public. So far away from my housing unit, I bolt to the nearest bathroom. Before the tears have had a chance, my stomach bullet trains in reverse. I'm not able to reach the toilet, and my uniform's covered in lunch's corn chowder. As I kneel on the dank bathroom floor, I cradle my sweaty forehead in the crick of my elbow and let the streams of snot and spit and tears swirl together and mix in the bowl. My hair is stuck in the grimy condensation on the outer rim of the toilet. At any other moment in my life, this would send me reeling in disgust. Right now, I don't bother to lift my head. I don't save my hair, just like I didn't save my friend. Keena killed herself on the evening of June 21st, 2006. It was a Wednesday and the longest day of the year. Life here hasn't changed because of her violent death. I still do my dishes in the sink above my toilet. I still worry about the next shakedown. I wear the same clothes I wore when I met Keena. They are the same clothes I wore the day she died. The compound is no different either. The day after Keena's death, a new girl was sleeping in her bed and wearing her uniform. There was a memorial service, but I didn't go. From what I hear, it consisted of roughly 3 sentences. Keena is just another death. The prison swallowed her up like a vast black ocean. I know that only 2 weeks from now, the memory of her will vanish as well. Still, she is part of every woman here.
Live from Texas Death Row continues. Down the run, Barney wants to talk about his French girlfriend. He met her through the pen pal service of the French Coalition to abolish the death penalty. Barney reads me a portion of her latest letter. "We're all afraid of Bush. We know that just like Hitler, we're going to be at war all the time." "Come on, Barn," I interrupted him. "What's the deal with the French?" "They take everything personally," he answered. "They don't see current events in terms of politics. They don't even see politics in terms of politics. They don't see the death penalty or war in terms of public policy. Instead, they turn everything inward. They ask themselves, What does so-and-so or this and that mean to me? And Marie told you this? I asked. Not really in so many words, but I figured it out. Hey, that's why she's French. That's why the French are French. There you have it. 800 years of French attitude explained in 5 minutes by Barney on Texas death row. When Abu Ghraib's story broke, Bush said, "That's not how we do things in America." A few years ago, before I came to the underbelly, I'd agree. Then I came to the Texas pen. I never thought about any of this stuff when I was free. Like most Americans, I was too busy to take our institutions personally. I never took notice of the 1996 TV images when Governor Bush was running things, of the training tape made in Brazoria County, of the naked inmates forced to lie on the ground while attack dogs were set loose on them. The guards told the prisoners to crawl on their knees while I kicked them and prodded them with electric batons. Bush never said a word. I've seen plenty and heard horror stories. Not only do we do Abu Ghraib things in America, it is standard operational procedure. Shortly after the War on Terror began, and after ordering the bombing of Afghanistan, President Bush wrote to his father, "I feel no burden of the office." I take it to mean he does not take war nor anything else personally. Facing death every day in Texas prisons, I have to take war personally. Do any of us have a choice? Death row inmate Harvey tells me about his fatherless home where his mom worked 2 convenience store jobs, mostly to support her boyfriend's drug habit. She was hardly ever at home. Her boyfriend rarely left. Home was a clapboard shack in Houston's 5th Ward. Harvey hated school because he didn't fit in and he didn't have the cool clothes other kids wore. It all changed for him when he fell in with a certain group, a certain gang. Harvey says they truly cared about him. They took him cruising in a convertible. They stole a gold chain for him. People started looking at Harvey in a different way. They respected him. His new friends bought him some fly clothes and colors. They gave him spending money. For the first time in his life, Harvey belonged to something, to someone. After a year of riding with them, Harvey was pulled aside to kick it with the gang's leader. He told Harvey, "You've been with us a good while, man. We ain't never asked you to do one thing. We take care of you, though. Am I right? Yeah, well, now we need you to take care of us. It's your turn, Harvey. You got to do one thing, that's all." He gave Harvey a gun. They both played with it for a while, doing the macho ritual to each other. Then Harvey was told who to shoot, where, and when. "Unless you want out." The leader put the gun to his own head and laughed. Then he put it to Harvey's head. "You want out, Harvey?" "No, man. Give me that pistol."
Richard Miller, First Place Poetry, 2009. Lepidoptera, or butterflies. There is a blue chair in a room with 60 men. It bears the gravity of a black hole, an inward burning star, drawing all light, all matter toward it. Names flutter on it like butterflies with broken wings. Fancy, Lenora, Consuela, Dani, Diamond, Angelica, Destiny, Skippers, Whirlabouts, Swallowtails, Meadowmarks, Ringlets, Hairstreaks, Queens. The room is a crazy time capsule, part Greek temple, part Colosseum, part chrysalis. Its entrance supported by 3 pillars: wisdom, understanding, patience. Strange magical runes embellished its walls. Foreign exotic words which, like Joseph's golden plates, require ermine, thummim, and breastplate to decipher. Respect, boundaries, empathy, honesty, victim, human, value. Principalis, veritas, fidelis, sinceritas, fundamentum, economon, magnificentum. Some have had these words transcribed for them. are beginning to understand. Some scratch their heads, sure though the walls to places which no longer exist. Squirrels, nose to the window, seeking nuts or graham crackers. Hawks can be seen on distant, delicate clouds. The staccato crackle of nearby gunfire startles dense flocks of starlings, momentarily darkening to the sky. A clock is held to the wall with eyes. The men being men tell bad jokes, cringe inwardly, laugh, think, what a jerk. Tell more jokes. Circumstances follow. There are 57 different remedies for their phobias, some which actually work. Like harvester moths, we are carnivorous. We have all ravaged beauty. We too have names. Markel, Byron, Donnie, Calvin, Jameson, Daniel, Alden. Fathers, husbands, brothers, uncles, cousins, acquaintances, strangers. In ancient Greece, it was said the soul departs the dying body in the form of a butterfly. In other parts, butterflies are acknowledged keepers of displaced spirits, deliverers, perhaps of misplaced dreams. I sit in my chair, weighted in my crimes. A breeze, a breath rustles the names, and I watch, enthralled, as the room begins filling with others, standing, elbowing, smoking, jabbering, listening, idling, genuflecting, almost as if we are not there, but we are here, as they see us. One big girl, an angry face, shoves at a guy's shoulders, rages, "Listen, damn you, listen!" Her momentum carrying straight through. The guy nudges his neighbor, points at the clock. A mother holds the hands of her children, a boy with curls and a missing tooth, a girl who needs to eat more. They stand overlapping a man they resemble. Their tears glisten like honeydew, drop silently on a puddle to the floor. Other tears fall. Pool, a rivulet falls, stretches, wends its way towards me like a living finger of God. The room is packed so densely my lungs labor. There are butterflies in my stomach. The sound of beating wings is deafening. I want to hold, to comfort every person, every spirit I see. I long to take the griefs buried within each, purify it all in the golden core of my being, channel it outward into the communal air, in the astonishing blue sea, dissolve it all into the eternity which is our legacy. I want desperately the power to repair butterfly wings. Certain Lipocondrian novel stages bore patiently into the heartwood of full-grown trees, emerge from a dying tree, metamorphose, to fly away like living jewels. I hear the silent clock ticking on the wall. Know the moment is gone. See everything as it is. Room, chair, men. Their voices drone ceaselessly as one thought clouds my mind. Look, damn you, look! Yet my voice remains like the clock, like the moon, like the tears. I open my mouth to pronounce the words. What comes out is butterfly.
David Leitner, excerpts from a journal of a prisoner. Looking back through my journal from 1998, I see quite a different person, and yet the same. My goodness, my gracious, my God, why was I cursed with this unrelenting drive to ask the big questions? I'm not a philosopher. I feel like I'm a snail blindly sliming my way across a landscape of infinite crabgrass, going nowhere, one blade at a time. Or rather, I should say, I used to feel that way. Now it's a little different. I still feel like a snail tossed on some suburban joker's lawn, but I understand there's nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. Nothing to change or be changed. And yet I still go. Yes, I will write. I will write till the day I die. Yes, I will speak, be there ear to hear me or not. But I can see a vision of something greater, The other side is very close, the eternal, the divine, the transcendent. And though there is a wall that keeps me here in the mundane world, that wall also has doors, doors through which I am learning to pass.
William Van Poyck, Sussex, 1 State Prison, Waverly, Virginia, Thursday, July 24th, 2008. An hour ago, the Commonwealth of Virginia executed my friend, Christopher Scott Emmett. I had to wait and watch the 10 p.m. news on TV to be certain the execution had in fact occurred. This is my regular ritual on the nights of executions, which always occur at 9 p.m. in Virginia. It bothered me that I had to endure 6 or 7 mundane stories, the weather, the traffic, a story about feral cats, before the announcer reported, almost casually, that Emmett had been put to death. Virginia is very serious about killing people. In the name of teaching its citizens that killing is wrong, this was the 4th execution in 8 weeks. 4 days ago, I had to bite my lip as I helplessly watched the guards come in, chain Emmett up, and take him away to Greensville, a 10-minute drive away, where the death house is located and the deed is done. In the almost 9 years I've been here on Virginia's death row, I've seen them cart away and kill about 40 men. 3 of those guys were good friends of mine. But even with the other guys I knew well by dint of living in close proximity for years at a time, even if I didn't care for them much. It's never easy to watch this happen. To be in the middle of this process at ground zero, especially when in the back of my mind I must harbor this scenario that inevitably my time will come and I will be dealt within a similar manner.
I am a man in blue. I am a man with the blues. I exist in blackness, but live in the blues. I was not always blue or black, blues or blackness, but here I am in blue. Therefore I am in darkness. I yearn for the light. I grope in the darkness, stretching out to grasp a thin strand of brightness in the distance ahead. I hope only to stretch myself to somehow reach the light. Someday soon, bathe himself in light and celebrate in the brightness of a new day, shrouded in the brilliance of color.
I'd like to ask the audience to join me in thanking our readers and thanking the men and women. My name is Jackson Taylor, and I'm the director of the Penn Prison Writing Program, and I'd like to thank the men and women who wrote the pieces that we heard tonight. And I'd also like to thank our readers for doing a great job. I've asked Lemon and Jamal to stay up here with me, and we're going to do an interview with them and talk a little bit about their writing practice. We have a very interesting opportunity right now to speak actually to people who are serving time. And for a moment, I'd like to say, if you can get your hands on a pen or a pencil, copy a sentence out of a newspaper or a magazine or anything you can see, or ask yourself what you can remember, and just write. And there's no wrong way to do it, and something can come of that. Now, as Jessica mentioned in her opening remarks, we were hoping to be joined by Kenneth Hartman, the author of Mother California. and he's serving, as she said, a life sentence in California for a murder he committed when he was 19. And he's unable to join us, but we want to play a brief excerpt from an interview he did with his publisher, James Atlas, and this took place on Friday.
I wanted to ask you, you've written a great deal about how futile the system is in terms of actual rehabilitation, that when you talk about a correctional facility, what it's correcting is not behavioral necessarily, and it's in fact an environment that's very deleterious to rehabilitation. How do you feel that prisoners respond to the hard circumstances in which they live? I mean, obviously some, like you, have made a great deal out of it and achieved a tremendous amount in so many ways, but it's also a tremendously destructive force, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think it is, and I have to say, going in, I'm extraordinarily lucky human being. I've had some wonderful people come into my life and help me to grow in a circumstance that generally doesn't foster growth. I think the average guy, the average person, male and female in prison, I think that the way the system has become over the past 25 years is there was this idea that if prison got tough enough, nobody would come back. John Julio, I believe, was the guy who wrote some of the original articles that posited this idea. He wrote about the broken windows theory and things like that. But the idea was that if you make prison tough enough, and harsh enough, that people will go, oh my God, this is really terrible, and I just don't want to come back to prison. But I don't think that takes human nature into account really at all in a rational way, because people don't come to prison because they're sane and rational and making wise choices. So I think all it really did was it just took away the possibilities for people to reform and rehabilitate and find some way of re-entering society as better people. And if you look at the facts are in California, when I first came to prison, the recidivism rate was less than a third what it is now. And prison in those days had many more programs. It had more ed college. It had conjugal visiting. It had lots more trades. There was much more to do, many more things for a person to do to become better, for lack of a better word. So I think it both doesn't work in theory, and it certainly has not worked on the ground, which is why we've reached the point now where we're talking about rehabilitation again, but it's going to require some tremendous changes in the way that prison is not only conceived, but as it's actually implemented on the ground.
Do you think?
Wow, thank you, Ken Hartman, on rehabilitation. Not having access to prisoners is not unusual, and it's by design. And one of the ways that we do get to hear from them in our culture, in our society, is through their writing, the writings that get sent to us. Now, both of you, Lemon and Jamal, have writing in your lives now as a regular practice. And I wonder if you could just talk to us a little bit about when you started to write and how that connected you to prison, if it did. Jamal, why don't you go first?
Well, I started writing in prison. I served a total of 9.5 years in prison, in city, state, and federal prison. And first started, I think, the way a lot of prisoners started, just trying to write really cool letters, to my girl and to different people, and then had other guys ask me to write letters, and then people would write me back and said, "Oh, well, you should be a writer," and that evolved kind of into poetry, and then plays. When I was in federal prison, there were some dedicated people who came in from St. Mary's College and from the University of Kansas, and the English teachers really encouraged us to write, were hard on us about the writing. I mean, we had one professor who would come in and she would, mark up your papers, and so she was
I hope that didn't stop you.
It didn't. It actually encouraged us, especially one day when she came in with a copy of the Bible that she had redlined. I mean, God was sitting in the back of the class trembling. I hope Professor Jones doesn't look at my paper. So it taught us craft. It taught us that, we would say, are you as hard on the students who are on the main campus at the University of Kansas? And she would say, no, actually, I'm not. But you guys know that you have to be twice as good to get half as far. And I think we appreciated her instilling the discipline in the craft of writing.
Thanks. Lemon, what was it like for you?
Well, I didn't really write in prison for the first 2 times I was there. I had been to prison in New York City, in Rikers Island. I did a year, and then I spent some time in Columbus, Ohio. And it wasn't until where I had to face, when they came to pick me up, the bounty hunters came to pick me up from New York because I had escaped Ohio. I had left Ohio because I didn't live there. I went out there to just do crime. Sorry. Yeah. It's honest, I was a young man, I didn't know. So I went out there, and then when I was let go in Ohio, I never went back. So they found me in New York, and by the time they found me, I was already a poet and a writer. So I started to write. What I did in prison, though, was I spent a lot of time reading. So when I came out and I started writing, I started writing because someone offered me a job working in the theater troupe because of one poem I wrote. And I guess that was the job I was supposed to have because, unfortunately, society didn't want to give me a job because I had a criminal record.
Can you talk a little bit about what you had access to in terms of reading material in prison?
Oh, I had access not only to just books, I had access to great thinkers. I had access to, some of the officers were really strong with me. They liked me. I had a really cool personality, and I kept that in order to ride my bed out. And so people gravitated towards me, and confided in me with a lot of their stories, and a lot of even the officers were in prison themselves. This is where they worked. So I had my share of just inmates. Well, I don't like to say inmates, just people I was incarcerated with. Sharing their stories with me, and not everything was so deep and dark. A lot of them were kind of funny. A lot of them were really crafty. Some of them would take bars of soap and make amazing sculptures out of it. It was amazing. And then they would talk to you while they're cutting the soap up, and tell you stories. And you just, for me, I soaked all that up. I'm a kind of sponge artist. I soak it all up, and for some reason it comes out later because of my just talent for having a long distance memory. I can remember everything vividly from just my past. So
the Penn Prison Writing Program, we believe in more education for prisoners, not less. But one of the things we'd love to see happen is that people who actually work in correctional facilities would have access to education, that there would almost be like a GI Bill for people who worked in the prison system, because it's a pretty brutal environment to have to show up for every day and earn a paycheck.
And what's bred into the prisoners on one side and the guards on the other side is distrust and fear of one another. They don't want the prisoner becoming a larger community. In corrections, they have the 3 C's that's called care, custody, and control. And they say that's what they're there to do. And the idea of access is relative to where you are. Lemon and I were talking about, Rikers Island, where we both spent some time. And there's not a lot there in terms of books and, access to education. But there is, the television room, and there's a lot of sports equipment. In fact, if there's some tension, what they like to do is just kind of come, bring people to the gym or the yard and throw a lot of balls out to play with. And the library is very limited. State prison a little bit more, federal prison a little bit more. But it was interesting, on Rikers Island, people were smuggling books. And when I started doing time as a teenager in the 60s, it was related to my involvement in the Black Panther Party. We had to smuggle books in from court. It was actually easier to smuggle drugs in than it was to get a book. And the big thing was when a guard would hand you a book. There was an officer there named Mr. Arno, who I had a chance to reconnect with on the outside, who would smuggle books and knew that his job was at risk. He might have been better off, bringing in some other contraband.
He's retired by now.
He's retired, and he's a great guy. He actually still works with young people, has the largest collection of black authors outside of the Schomburg Library. and works with young people, and he always says, the reason why I work with young people, my friend Raymond Johnson is in the audience, he knows Mr. Arnold, he always says, I'm training my replacements for people to do the work through education.
We publish a handbook, as you both know, for writers in prison that we send to them for free, and one of the things that we did the last time we revised it was we began to put examples of different narrative strategies or patterns, or an example of what first-person narrative looks like, because people were writing us prior and saying, we like what you're suggesting, but we don't have any books to go look at what you're telling us. So we began to put examples in. So this is very helpful. Tell us about what your daily practice is now as a writer.
Well, my daily practice as a writer is I try to get 2-3 hours a day in. It's difficult because I teach screenwriting at Columbia University, where I am chair of the graduate film school. So I spend a lot of time reading students' work and critiquing. So every moment that I can kind of steal the right is a precious moment. And I try to, as a professor of professional practice, to try to practice the craft of writing. Been fortunate over the years to be able to go back and forth between writing plays and screenplays and books. I'm currently working on a book and a screenplay, simultaneously. It keeps you sharp, and then if you're working with young writers, it keeps you honest.
Lemon, what about you?
I think I'm at a different phase in my writing at this point. I'm new to a new phase in my writing. It's like right now I have a play that I'm working on. I just finished one, so I'm working on the next one. And it seems like I like to tell my stories through characters. So I'm always trying to find the right kind of character to tell something that I've been dealing with, or something that I see somebody else dealing with. And this play is called Toast, and it's about the black oral narratives. This is based in the 1920s, and so right now I'm trying to think about what Dolomite's story is going to be and what Shine's story is going to be, and Boo Hill McCoy and all these characters I have from the black oral narratives, and trying to put them in one room together, because they've never been in the same room together. They've been in anthologies together. They've been in people's vocal or like spoken word pieces dating way back to the 20s, but now I'm trying to stick them in one room. So that's what my writing process is like. It's more in my head now. Like, okay, how do I get Shine to shine?
Do you feel like by working on it that you do acquire more skill the longer you stay at it?
I'm skilled, man. I'm skilled. I just believe
I ask you that because that's something, a core belief of our program is that writing is a skill that can be practiced, and we believe very strongly that it leads to other kinds of skill, and not, it can lend skill in an employment situation, it can lend skill in any number of arenas. So that's one of the reasons I'm asking you that, because I do think it is the practice where the skill begins to strengthen.
It's absolutely true that the practice will make you better and leads to other things, and they're translatable skills to be able to express feelings and ideas. I want to talk just for a moment too about we've all heard the pen is mightier than the sword. I've seen in prison the ability to writing not only to transform individuals but situations. In maximum security prisons, Leavenworth, San Quentin, Sing Sing, people stand in different areas of the yard. They're called courts for courtyards. And so you'll have different groups that kind of hang out, and no one crosses into anybody else's court without permission. It's a quick way to get killed. And I wrote a play. And the way I wrote the play was that I had done some agitprop kind of guerrilla theater when I was in the Panthers. And I was sitting in the big yard one day, and I had first gotten there to Leavenworth, and there's the Mexican Mafia, the Aryan Brotherhood, the Black Guerrilla Family, guys doing 25, 50, 100 years, life sentences. And an old guy named Mr. Cody came and approached me, and he was a black prisoner who had been in prison for a long time and was from New Orleans and ran a lot of the wars in New Orleans. And he came up and he said, "Hey, young blood, heard you did them plays and things on the outside." I said, "Yes." I wonder how he knew that, because everybody knew the Black Panther stuff. And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Uh-huh," and he just walked away. And I thought maybe I violated the convict code, because the convict code is, don't steal from another convict, Don't rat on another convict, do your own
And
time.
don't write plays.
Yeah. The next day he comes back with the two biggest black guys in the joint. You know, I'm reading a book and all of a sudden the sun eclipsed and I looked up and there's these big guys. And he said, "Young blood, about them plays." And I said, "Oh boy, here it comes. I'm in trouble." He said, "Why don't you write something for Black History Month?" I done checked it with the warden. So I went to the library. No, he asked me to do a play for Black History Month. So I went to the library. This is how I started writing plays. And I went to the theater section. And there was only one black play. It was A Raisin in the Sun. There were only two black plays in the section, right? The whole theater section. Romeo and Juliet, Raisin in the Sun. And I'm reading this and tears come to my eyes. And not because Lorraine Hansberry's words are just so beautiful, but because there's women characters, you know? Because I'm going to put this play on. I said, "Mr. Cody, this play, the only play I found has women in it." You said, "That's all right. Just look on the yard, pick out 3 or 4 dudes. We'll put a dress on them." I went back to my cell and I started writing. And Mr. Cody gave me my cast. He had aspirations of being a producer. You guessed it. It was the two big black guys struck by death. So we're rehearsing. And as we're rehearsing, into the middle of our rehearsal comes the two leaders of the Mexican Mafia, La M. Now these guys were already doing life and they had about 5 more murders since they were in prison. And everybody had the same thought. La M has left their court. Who are they here to kill? And I'm rehearsing with these guys. And, you know, we're all trying to, you know, now the guys are into it. Before they were ignoring me. It was like, "Okay, Jamal, I'm into it. Look, I'm a tree. You know, I'm a palm tree." And the guy, Raphael, after about 10 minutes, he jumps up and he's real upset. And he comes to me. He was like, "Yo, Holmes, can I speak to you a minute?" I was like, "Oh, shit, here it comes." You know, he says, "Yo, man." He says, "I've been sitting here for about 10 minutes. And I've been watching you work, Holmes. There's no secret in the joint. And I'm going to tell you something, man. That guy you're working with, that effing guy, Holmes, he's not feeling his character." So I said, "Why don't you join?" He joined. I had to rewrite the play. The next day, the Aryan Brotherhood sent their lead guy up, right? He comes back to the Aryan Brotherhood court, and they were like Big Red, and Big Red was like a 5th-degree black belt. They said, "What happened? What was the blacks and Mexicans doing?" He was like, "A play." It was like, "What did you do about it, Red?" He was like, "But they give me a part." So we were the only multicultural group in prison. Guys were writing, they were doing poetry. We had our own courtyard, right? And we kind of changed the energy, and that's what writing can do. It transforms the individual, but it transforms the energy in prison.
I want to ask you both a question about access. Like, I'm thinking about this too because of Ken Hartman, who we heard today, who was not able to phone in. And I'm also asking it because one of the other pieces that was read tonight by a man named Charles Norman, and he wrote the piece about growing flowers on the in the yard. And I tried to see him last December. I happened to be driving to Florida, and I was going to pass right by the facility where he was in, and we were giving him a special award for his achievement over a number of years. He's an exceptional writer, and he's been a model prisoner in many ways, and he's done a long, hard sentence. And I had lovely, pen, letterhead, stationery, and I did all the things that you're supposed to do, and, got permission part of the way, and then was denied access, and wasn't told in the way that we didn't find out till today that we wouldn't be able to speak to Ken on phone. I couldn't get to see Charlie, and I was calling, I must have made 20 phone calls, from Maryland and Virginia and from North Carolina, South Carolina, all the way down until I was passing Daytona where he is, and I couldn't get in to see him. And then they said, "Oh, we're really sorry, you can't." This inability to access people. Did you experience that, and did writing connect you in some way during that? Now, Lemon, I know you weren't writing in prison, but were you writing letters maybe, or?
Well, I wrote when I came back to Ohio. I was already a poet when there was, and during that time there was a benefit by the poetry community in New York to raise money to free me or to raise money for my legal fees, called Lemonade. And they all, so the poetry community got together and raised money to send it to Ohio. So during that time, while I was waiting to hear what my fate was going to be, I was writing. When the bounty hunters came to pick me up and bring me back to Ohio, I was writing. So during that time, I never experienced a visit in prison, unfortunately. I didn't have that luxury. I don't think many of us had that luxury when we were locked up. So writing and reading comes as a way to kind of heal that wound for a lot of us. You know, we use writing and reading, and I say that simultaneously because that's what I did. You know, a lot of us do read and you know, as well as write, but I think that's what causes us to kind of escape the world, and it also brings something different from what the TV is bringing. You know. I mean, I've been in a situation. You know, we've all had these. It's great because we always share these war stories. You know, and you know, I remember there was such a big argument over books. You know, when I was in Rikers Island, people were fighting over books, and there was a fight between two guys over the difference between the word knowledge and wisdom, and they fought each other for that. Because one said the knowledge is the same thing as wisdom, and the guy was like, no, and next thing you know, it escalated into a fight. And it was like, wow, that's interesting to start a fight, you know, over words, you know.
Debating society.
But it's just like that's the way it is. It's, like, prison is full of life, even though, you know, your life is taken away from you. You'd be surprised how, you know, how much is going on internally, you know.
It's just so, you know, when I was in prison, America was number 3 in the world in terms of the number of people that was locked up, behind South Africa and the then Soviet Union. Now we're number 1. What's been cut are all the educational programs. I earned 2 college degrees when I was in prison, graduated summa cum laude from the University of Kansas. Nothing on my transcript or on my prison records say that I'm a member of the Alumni Association. It's not like on my diploma, my Jayhawk is like behind bars going, like, peace, you know. And every study shows that the rate of recidivism low is proportionate to the amount of education a man or woman can get behind bars. But all these programs are cut. It's not possible to do what I did and what a few other men did in prison, a few other men and women did in prison in terms of earning degrees and then putting the combination of the formal education and the prison street education to use to make a difference in society. So we are back to the examples of people like Malcolm X, who taught himself to read and write in prison, became a great writer and a great orator, and other people who educate themselves in prison and understand that that is an amazing way to stay connected with your humanity and other people, and then to open your heart and soul. And as the poem that I was privileged to read, open your mouth and the light will come out, a butterfly will come out.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Thank you both for talking to us. In closing, I'd like to thank everyone connected with the program. We have a fantastic committee that works very, very hard, a group of volunteers so dedicated, and we have a fantastic chair, Claudia Menza, and we have a terrific new executive director at Penn that we're very excited about. And if you've ever had the privilege of working for somebody who makes you better at what you do by the faith and the trust that you feel from that person, we have that kind of person, and I'm happy about that. I also want to thank you for your donations tonight to try to keep this program alive and keep it vital and happening. And if there's any way those of you who are streaming us have an opportunity to help, that would be greatly appreciated. Our handbook is almost out of copies, and we're going to be reprinting it in March, and we are trying to put the money together to do just that. So any contribution is welcome, and the work of Penn is a very important work. And your presence here tonight proves that, and the stories that we heard and your readings tonight prove that. And thank you so much for your attendance.